The second you open your mouth to explain yourself, you've already lost the game. Picture this. You're in a meeting. Your boss questions your competence. A colleague throws shade at your work. Someone twists your words at a dinner party. Your chest tightens. Your heart pounds. Your brain is screaming at you to set the record straight, to clarify, to prove them wrong. So you speak, you explain, you justify. And in that exact moment, you hand them your throat on a silver platter. Because the world doesn't judge you by how truthful your words are. It judges you by how desperate you sound when you deliver them. Niccolò Machiavelli, the Renaissance master of power dynamics, understood a brutal truth that most Americans today have completely forgotten. Power isn't about being right. It's about who controls the frame. And the moment you defend yourself, you've stepped into their courtroom. You've accepted their role as judge and made yourself the defendant. But what if you didn't? What if you did the one thing that terrifies a manipulator more than anything else? Absolutely nothing. Let's talk about why Americans are hemorrhaging $359 billion every year because they don't understand this principle. That's not a typo. Research from CPP Global shows that American employees spend an average of 2.8 hours per week, that's over 145 hours per year, dealing with workplace conflicts and interpersonal drama. Most of that time, it's people defending themselves, explaining themselves, and trying desperately to be understood, and it's destroying their power, their reputation, and their bank accounts. Peaceful Leaders Academy. Here's what most people don't realize. When you defend yourself, you're not protecting your reputation, you're broadcasting your insecurity to everyone in the room. The biology of the defense trap. Let's start with what's happening inside your body the moment someone accuses you of something. Your amygdala, that primitive alarm system in your brain, lights up like a Christmas tree. Cortisol floods your system. Your heart rate spikes. This is your body's ancient survival mechanism kicking in. And here's where it gets interesting. Studies show that when cortisol levels spike during social stress, your ability to engage in active strategic behavior actually decreases. You're literally being biochemically programmed to react defensively. Science direct +1. But here's the kicker. The person attacking you, they're counting on this reaction. They want to see you scramble. They want to watch you sweat. Because in American culture, where 78% of employees report feeling emotionally disconnected at work, the fastest way to feel powerful is to make someone else feel weak. And nothing screams weakness louder than a defensive explanation. Finance.yahoo. Think about the most powerful people you know. CEOs running Fortune 500 companies, top-tier negotiators, that friend who somehow always gets what they want without breaking a sweat. What do they all have in common? They don't explain themselves. A Reddit user who worked with top executives put it perfectly. The best CEO I ever met would sit in silence during confrontations. He'd let the conversation drag on until it became awkward. People would talk themselves out of bad ideas while he just sat there watching. Reddit. That's not passivity. That's strategic dominance. The vacuum of silence. Here's a psychological weapon that Machiavelli would have loved. When you stay silent during a conflict, you create what I call the vacuum of silence. The human brain is absolutely terrified of silence during confrontation. It signals a rupture in the social fabric. It tells the primitive part of our brain that something has gone very, very wrong. Let's play this out. Someone says, "You're being incredibly selfish right now." The old you would immediately respond, "No, I'm not. I did X, Y, and Z for you yesterday. I'm just tired." Defensive, weak, reactive. Now imagine the Machiavellian approach. They say, "You're being incredibly selfish right now." You look at them. You hold eye contact. Your face is completely neutral. And you wait. 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds. You know what happens in that silence. The person who attacked you starts to crumble. The vacuum you've created forces them to sit in the tension they created. Usually, they'll start talking again to fill the void. I mean, you're not always selfish, but just right now. Why are you looking at me like that? They start defending themselves against your silence. YouTube +1. The power has flipped, and you haven't said a single word. This is the grey rock method taken to a weaponized level. You become a void, and you can't punch mist. You can't cut water. By refusing to provide the resistance they're expecting, you cause their attack to pass right through you, and they lose their balance in the process. YouTube Medical News Today +1. Research published by MIT's Human Dynamics Laboratory shows something fascinating. They can predict team performance based solely on non-verbal communication patterns with 80% accuracy. Think about that. Your silence, your composure, your refusal to react. These aren't just psychological tactics, they're predictors of success. Percolator, Substack. The agree and amplify weapon. But sometimes silence isn't enough. Sometimes you need words, but never defensive words. Enter one of the most powerful techniques in dark psychology: agree and amplify. This creates cognitive dissonance in your attacker's brain that's almost impossible to recover from. Josh King Madrid +1. Here's how it works. Someone makes an absurd accusation. If you defend yourself, you validate that the accusation was serious enough to warrant a response. Instead, you lean into it. You exaggerate it until it becomes ridiculous. Attacker: you're so obsessed with money, you're greedy. Defensive: you: no, I'm not. I just want to provide for my family. Boring, predictable, weak, Machiavellian. You caught me. I actually swim in a vault of gold coins like Scrooge McDuck every Tuesday. It's terrible for my back. Say it with a flat face or a slight smirk. What have you just done? You've refused to be insulted. You've proven you're not insecure about the topic. You've turned their serious attack into a joke. You've established that you're the one framing reality, not them. This is what psychologists call amused mastery. And it's the ultimate high-status position. It's the attitude of a parent watching a toddler throw a tantrum. You don't get angry at the toddler. You don't argue with them. You're amused by the drama because you know you're safe. Therational male +1. When you defend yourself, you're getting down on the floor and screaming with the toddler. Don't do that. Stand up, look down, smile. The fogging technique: disarm with agreement. Here's another counterintuitive power move. Sometimes the most dominant thing you can do is simply agree. But not the way you think. This is called the fogging technique, and when executed properly, it's devastating. Revolution Learning +2. Imagine someone is listing your flaws, trying to provoke a fight. You look them dead in the eye and say calmly, "You're right." Then you stop talking. "You're right. I am difficult sometimes. You're right, I did mess that up." When you throw a rock into fog, what happens? Nothing. No thud. No rebound. It just disappears. When you agree with an attacker, you steal their momentum. They're pushing against a door they expect to be locked. When you open it, they fall flat on their face. They wanted resistance. Resistance would validate their anger. Agreement neutralizes it completely. revolutionlearning.co. But here's the critical nuance. You agree with the truth in their statement without accepting the shame they're trying to attach to it. There's a massive difference between admitting a mistake and accepting a character assassination. Boss: you messed up this report. You're incompetent. Defense: I'm not incompetent. The data was wrong. Power move: you're right. The report has errors. I'll fix it. Notice what you left out. You didn't address the incompetent part. You ignored the insult and addressed the fact. You took ownership of the action, but not the identity. This signals immense confidence. Only someone secure in their competence can admit a mistake this easily. Insecure people fight to the death to prove they're perfect. Secure people say, "Oops, my bad," and move on. Flip the courtroom, become the judge. Every conversation has a hidden architecture. In conflicts, there's usually a judge and a defendant. The judge asks questions. Why did you do that? What were you thinking? Who do you think you are? The defendant answers and explains. Here's the secret. Whoever asks the questions holds the power. The power moves +1. The most lethal Machiavellian trick is to refuse the role of defendant and seize the role of judge. You do this by answering a question with a question, or by analyzing their behavior instead of your own. Them. Why are you always so late? Defensive. You. There was traffic. My alarm didn't go off. Losing. Machiavellian. You. Why does my arrival time affect your mood so deeply? Boom. Suddenly you're not talking about the clock. You're talking about their emotional instability. You've put the spotlight back on them. You're psychoanalyzing them in real time. This is infuriating to a manipulator because they wanted you on your back foot. Instead, you're walking around them like they're a specimen in a jar. Grahamman. It's interesting that you perceive it that way. Does saying that make you feel better? You seem very invested in this. These phrases are shields. They acknowledge the sound coming out of their mouth, but they don't accept the content. You're saying, this is your stuff, not mine. Keep it. This isn't just a technique. It's a spiritual stance. It's the realization that other people's perceptions of you are none of your business. Their anger is their problem. Their disappointment is their responsibility to manage. When you defend yourself, you're trying to carry their emotional baggage for them. Stop it. Let them carry their own weight. The shadow work. Why defense hurts. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The reason it hurts when someone attacks you is because they're touching a wound that's already there. If I tell you that you have green skin, you won't get mad. You'll think I'm crazy. You won't defend yourself, you'll laugh. But if I tell you you're a failure and you immediately jump to defend yourself, it's because some part of you suspects I might be right. YouTube +1. The ultimate defense isn't a verbal technique, it's self-knowledge. It's looking into your own darkness, owning your flaws, and accepting your shadow. Carl Jung said it best. When you know you're capable of selfishness and someone calls you selfish, you can calmly say, sometimes, yes. When you know you're capable of cruelty and someone calls you cruel, you can say, I can be. YouTube. You cannot shame someone who has already accepted themselves. You cannot expose someone who has nothing left to hide. This is what it means to be untouchable. You've integrated the parts of yourself that others try to use against you. You become transparent. The light passes through, the arrows pass through. You're no longer a fortress that needs defending. You're the wind, the reality distortion field. Let's talk about one of the most powerful business leaders in American history, Steve Jobs. Love him or hate him, the man understood power dynamics at a cellular level. Apple employees called it the reality distortion field. When Steve Jobs spoke, people didn't just hear him. He reshaped how they perceived what was possible. YouTube +1 Gale +1. How did he do it? He never explained himself. He never defended his decisions. He simply stated reality with such absolute certainty that everyone else's doubts evaporated. When engineers said something was impossible, he didn't argue. He didn't explain why they were wrong. He just looked at them and said, "You're doing it anyway." And they did. YouTube +1. That's not manipulation. That's frame control. Jobs believed in his vision so intensely that it overrode the doubts of everyone around him. The reality distortion field was essentially a transfer of belief, and the foundation of that transfer, never defending, never explaining, never justifying, the American workplace epidemic. Here's where this gets really practical for Americans watching this right now. Recent surveys show that 64% of American workers witness passive-aggressive behavior in their workplace at least once a week. Almost 70% say it's become a serious problem. And what's the most common passive-aggressive behavior? Talking behind people's backs, followed closely by friendly reminders and silent treatments, study finds. You know what all of these behaviors have in common? They're attempts to make you defend yourself. They're designed to put you in a position where you feel compelled to explain, to justify, to prove your worth. And every single time you take the bait, you lose. Meanwhile, defensive behaviors in businesses are costing companies billions in lost productivity. Stress from defensive workplace dynamics is the #1 cause of long-term employee absence. By 2030, economists predict this will cost over $26 billion in lost productivity in the UK alone, and the numbers are exponentially higher in the United States. TrainingZone.co. But here's what's really fascinating. The same research shows that when leaders learn to recognize and eliminate defensive behaviors, including the compulsion to defend and explain, productivity increases by 22%. 22%. That's the difference between a mediocre company and an industry leader. TrainingZone.co. The 7-day challenge. So here's your challenge, and I want you to take this seriously because it will change your life. For the next 7 days, you're going to play a game called No Defense. No matter what happens, no matter how small the accusation, you're forbidden from explaining yourself. If you're late, say, "I'm late." Don't give the reason. If you spill coffee, say, "I spilled the coffee." Don't blame the cup. If someone misunderstands you, let them misunderstand you. Sit in the fire of that discomfort. Feel the urge to fix it, to manage their perception, to be the good guy, and let that urge burn to ash. Watch what happens to the people around you. You'll see confusion first, then respect, then a strange kind of magnetism because people are drawn to certainty. And nothing screams certainty louder than someone who doesn't need to explain why they exist. You're reclaiming your energy. You're plugging the leaks in your soul. You're stepping out of the role of the child, seeking approval, and into the role of the sovereign who commands respect. The world will try to pull you back. It will try to bait you. It loves a reaction. Don't give it one. Final words. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince that everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. The moment you start explaining yourself, defending your actions, justifying your choices, you're letting everyone see your internal chaos. You're broadcasting your need for approval. You're signaling that your internal stability depends on their agreement. Goodreads. The most dangerous people in any room are the ones who cannot be read. The ones who don't explain. The ones who don't defend. Because when you explain, you reveal your values. You reveal what hurts you. You reveal your buttons. "I'm not stupid," you shout, and now they know your insecurity is intelligence. "I'm not a bad person," and now they know your insecurity is moral standing. Silence reveals nothing. It's a dark mirror, and when people look into it, they only see their own aggression reflected back, and that makes them profoundly uncomfortable. Remember, power doesn't plead, power doesn't panic, power doesn't perform for approval. Power simply is. And the most powerful people you'll ever meet never waste time explaining why they belong at the table. They're already sitting at the head of it. So stop defending, stop explaining, keep your mystery, keep your power, keep your silence. If this philosophy resonates with you, if you're tired of performing for others' approval, tired of bleeding energy into people who don't deserve your explanation, then here's what I need you to do. Hit that like button because it tells me you're ready to operate differently. Drop a comment telling me about a time when you defended yourself and it backfired. Let's learn from each other. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. And subscribe to this channel because we're building a community of people who understand that the game isn't about being understood. It's about being untouchable. Welcome to the new reality, the one where you hold the frame, where you make the rules, where your silence is louder than anyone's accusation. I'll see you in the next one.